Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more amendment. I just signed it, and it just needs to be copied and distributed. If there's someone else that has an amendment ahead of me, I'd be happy to wait. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the body, I would just like to move that we reconsider our action on Amendment number 423-003 and move, well, we don't have the amendment. Members of the body, maybe I can just explain to you what we're doing, and when the amendment gets here, you can cross-examine me. What I'm trying to do is reconsider our action on the amendment that took this from the Public Service Commission and put it into the Department of Agriculture. Here it comes right now. And I talked to the amendment coordinator about the discussion and the appropriateness of putting it in labor and business. And what this amendment essentially says is that this would go to the Department of Labor and Business, but would not require the establishment of another board, and that the department itself would have to provide the regulation. This discussion that the Department of Labor and Business, oversees these licensing boards, but I'm sensing there's not a lot of interest in creating another board, because these boards, these licensing boards, typically are made up of the members of the industry that they're regulating. And in this particular case, it's kind of a hard sell to ask a board to regulate marijuana when the board comes from the industry. So I'm asking that we consider putting this in labor and business, because that is the area of expertise, but not do it through a new board. And they researched it over the noon hour and told me that the amendments coordinator said that this had been discussed and they think this is possible. So the amendment you have before you, and I don't even have one myself, so I can't tell you the number, but does anyone, thank you. Thank you. And so my motion would be to reconsider our action on amendment number 423-003 and move to adopt amendment 423-015, which basically places this in the hands of the Department of Labor and Industry, for the moment at least, with the idea the expertise for regulating and licensing is in that department. Typically it's done through the adoption of boards, but in this case, this amendment specifically asks for an exception. In addition, the department shall provide all the administrative, legal, and clerical services needed by the boards within the department, including corresponding, receiving, and processing routine applications for licensing as defined. And it goes, and you can read it here quickly, but the purpose of this is to not put this authority to the board, that the department itself would do it. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peterson, your motion is to reconsider our actions on amendment number 423-003, correct?
Correct. That is the amendment that was presented that took it from Public Service to Department of Agriculture that we voted on and passed. And I'm asking we reconsider that action and adopt this amendment. I'm doing this all in one motion, and I'm told this is legal. I'd reconsider our action and adopt and propose we adopt Amendment 423-015 and put this in Department of Labor and Industry. Mr. Chairman.
Members of the committee, you've heard the motion of Senator Peterson. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, vote no.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, my apologies. Is there any discussion on the motion? It is debatable.
Mr. Chairman, I assume I'm correct. This is the motion to reconsider. Then we will have discussion of the amendment itself. Or is this a two-part motion, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President?
Mr. Chairman, Senator VanDyk, no. This is an all-inclusive motion. And this is the time, as I understood the way I presented it from our Code Commissioner, that this is a inclusive motion to do both, reconsider and adopt this amendment. This is the time for discussion.
Senator VanDyk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a substitute motion to segregate the motion before us, motion to reconsider and motion to adopt.
Members of the committee, that is a non-debatable motion. The motion is, the substitute motion is to segregate the Amendment 423-135, is that the right number? 015 from the reconsideration motion.
Mr. Chairman, could we have just a 2-minute recess to get these rules straight here? We're wrapped around the axle on the rules.
Members of the Senate, please be in order. Senator VanDyk.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we've come to some consensus on a process here, and with that, I withdraw my motion on the table.
Okay. Thank you, Senator VanDyk. Senator Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion and would like to move that we reconsider our action on amendment number 423-003. Mr. Chairman.
Members of the Senate, you've heard the motion of Senator Peterson. Is there any discussion? Senator VanDyk.
Mr. Chairman, I think that this warrants debate of the full Senate. I support the motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Caferro.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the sponsor.
Senator Peterson, do you yield?
I will, Senator Caferro.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, so what we have in front of us is a motion to reconsider, and then after that, do we vote on the amendment again?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Caferro, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? The motion is to reconsider our actions on Amendment 423-003. All those in favor of the motion signify by voting aye. Those opposed, vote no. Clerk, record the vote.
Mr. Chairman, 47 senators have voted aye, 3 senators have voted no.
With 47 senators voting aye and 3 voting no, the amendment passes. The motion passes. Senator Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the body, I think now we have before us the motion that was originally proposed. We've reconsidered our action, and the motion is that we voted on previously is now on the floor to substitute Department of Agriculture for Public Service Commission. And let me explain to this. We wrap this onion up with a series of motions, and now we have to unwrap it with the same series of motions. Does that make sense? We need to, I'm going to move that I'm going to recommend to the body that we vote no on this motion. And then I will offer a second motion that takes this motion out of play, in other words, and we start over. Then I will offer a motion that I originally started to offer to put the motion back, put the new amendment back into the bill. So we're reconsidering our action on the motion.
Senator Peterson, I was under the impression that we did not have to do that, and that we could just you could move your amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I stand corrected. Our reconsideration motion, I guess, canceled the motion. So we're back to square one. And now I would like to move amendment number 423-015 before you. That takes, we strike the words Public Service Commission and put insert Department of Labor and Industry. It's a fairly lengthy motion because there's wording in here that provides for labor and industry as a department to oversee this regulatory and licensing responsibility as a department and not through the appointment of a new board. I hope I'm explaining what I'm doing here. Mr. Chairman.
Is there discussion on the amendment? Senator Larsen.
Mr. Chairman, a question for the sponsor, please.
Senator Peterson, do you yield?
I yield.
Senator Larsen.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Mr. Sponsor, with this amendment, we are now voting on the labor and industry as the substitute for ag. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larsen, yes. Well, no, Mr. Chairman, Senator Larsen, actually, no. We're back to square one, and it's currently now in the Public Service Commission's authority based on the bill as it's currently written, and this motion would take it out of the Public Service Commission and place it in the Department of Labor and Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Peterson, I think that people were confused about that. I think I understood, and I believe that now I know what we're all voting on. Thank you very much.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Senator Jent. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Jent.
No. I support the motion. The Department of Labor and Industry has the Board of Pharmacy. It has the Board of Medical Examiners. It licenses chiropractors, dentists, and all sorts of folks that are in the medical profession. It has numerous professional licensing boards going as far afield as outfitting, denturists. One could go on and on if you look through the statute and peruse who's in there. Because it has the responsibility for all doings medical and state government that has to do with licensing or authority, I believe that this is the appropriate department. And I know we want to send a bill out of here, but we should look at sending a bill out of here that makes good sense, and this amendment helps this thing along the way.
Senator VanDyk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I rise with ambivalence on the amendment. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I liked putting the medical marijuana in the Department of Agriculture, clearly. The largest reason that I like that is, well, the main reason is because I thought that the PSC was highly incapable and not the right fit. I did believe that ag was the best fit. I think that it facilitates the ability for the department to do things like genetic testing on the plants. They're clearly the only agency that has the ability to do that. It seemed to make sense. That said, Department of Labor does have experience obviously in licensure. But what's the message that this sends here, folks? By very virtue of having this debate out here and trying to figure out which agency is going to draw the short straw, it sends a clear message that some needed input was not brought into this bill. Members of the committee, clearly we are within our authority to have this debate and make these decisions here. I'm going to vote no because I prefer it in agriculture, and that's fine if that doesn't pass. But again, the question becomes, here we are on the Senate floor debating a very important issue on behalf of some Montanans who really need this, but also addressing an industry that has had some fraudulent activities that we need to crack down on. And after an entire interim of debate and law enforcement coming in and industry folks coming in and hours of testimony, here we are, day 71, going, what agency is going to adopt this? There is a fundamental and inherent problem that has manifested itself, and that is we are not making sound policy decisions. The people of the state of Montana are not asking for a political balance. They're asking for a policy balance on all sides. And the one thing that has become evident today, in my opinion, is that we're not there. Now, we can go home and we can expect the Department of Labor or the Department of Ag or the Department of Health and Human Services or the Department of Justice or the Department of Revenue, whoever ends up with this, to adequately take care of this problem. But we've gone around and round in circles. I'm getting really nervous about this process.
Further discussion. Senator Bayleat.
Mr. Chairman, just real quickly, I just wanted to give a little bit more detail on Senator Peterson's comment that we want to move it to the Department of Business and Labor, but not set up a licensing board. I just want to confirm, as chairman of Business and Labor Committee, that the Department of Labor has that capability, and there are instances where they set up what I believe they call it a program, where there is not a board of licensing for that particular niche, but they just run it as a program. So that is definitely within their purview, and they've done it in the past. And I guess all I can say is that, and I'm going to vote for the amendment, all I can say is I'm glad I'm term limited out as chairman of Business and Labor.
Senator Larsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak on the amendment as well. I recently finished a nursery regulation bill with the assistance of the good senator from District 22. And it was a bill that we carried in the previous session as well. And in the course of that time, and while serving on the Ag Committee, we've learned a lot about regulation and licensing and so on. And I would tell you, members of the Senate, that the Department of Agriculture is perfectly prepared to do this kind of work. They do this very thing right now on other issues and other matters regarding the production and the transfer and importation of agricultural products. And I believe that the good senator from Billings made a good point about the genetic kind of testing and genetic coding that you can do on the various strains of plants, including marijuana. It's in the development stage now, but I think Department of Agriculture is a really good place for this. Just think about it for a moment. Horticulture, agriculture, this is a growth industry, so to speak, and I think it rightly belongs in agriculture. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick rebuttal. I appreciate the good senator's comments, but almost all pharmaceuticals and health agents that we use have a base in a plant or animal base because they're simply organic products. Insulin comes from a byproduct of slaughterhouses. That doesn't mean that USDA is in charge and FDA should be merged. To simply say that products, biological products used for a medicinal purpose have a plant or animal base means that they're within the field of agriculture is inaccurate. Agriculture is the production of food and fiber.
Further discussion. Senator Winniebrook.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to speak on the amendment here. You know, I think that whatever action that we take here is probably going to be a good action as long as we take it out of the PSC's oversight. But I kind of up in the air as far as if moving over to labor and industry is the right one. I've supported moving over to ag because marijuana is weed.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Gillan.
Mr. Chair, will the sponsor of the amendment yield to a quick question?
Senator Peterson, do you yield?
I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Peterson, in crafting the amendment, which I've just sort of brushed through, I guess my concern is that will the Department of Business and Labor, I don't know what their funding source is, whether the support for this program is going to come from whatever fees are generated. I know the Department of Labor and Industry gets a lot of federal money, so I just want to make sure that they would have the financial resources to programmatically implement the program. I just wondered whether you have any thoughts on that or any knowledge.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Gillan, you know, this bill has a small fiscal note already, I think designed to cover some of the licensing expenses. But as this bill comes together with these amendments, I'm sure in the process an additional fiscal note will be developed, an amended fiscal note will be developed, and I think until we complete our amendments here and pass something on the floor, I think it's a little hard to answer your question other than I was advised over the noon hour that if we wanted to do this and do it with some common sense and keep it within the department, the additional wording on page 3, item sub 13, was important in that it directs the department to do this and not delegate the responsibility for carrying out the provisions to a board. And you're right, the department probably will need some resources. I can't sit here and tell you I know the answer to the question because I don't, but it is pretty clear, I think, in this amendment that that will have to be considered as we move forward in the process. I think that, you know, I can't sit here and say I'm 100% sure this is a solution because I don't know the answer to that. But I do think it makes more sense to do it this way than put it in a department that focuses primarily on production agriculture. This is a very serious issue. We're trying to do something that will provide a solution and not just kick the can down the road. And I guess over the last 60 minutes, it was the best solution I thought we could come up with and move forward with a common sense approach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to quickly see whether I think Senator Essman wants to say something. My question is just, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. I'm not trying to stop the amendment, but it seems to me the Department of Labor and Industry has a lot of federal funding. So I just want to make sure that we at least are putting that out in the record that there may be some need to further adjust it. Senator Essman, do you have any thoughts?
Senator Essman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Gillan, thank you for the question. As the subcommittee and the full Judiciary Committee worked on this bill, I can speak for the subcommittee. We suspected, you know, the question of which agency this might end up with might be something that would end up getting resolved on the floor as it is today, at least in this House. Lord knows what will happen when it goes to the other House. But for that very reason, the bill was drafted with reference to state licensing authority in those sections 17 through 40, and it was drafted that the state licensing authority would be self-funding through fees adopted on the various entities that they are licensing. So regardless of whether it's in Agency A, Agency B, or Agency C, that fee charging rulemaking authority remains intact. I don't think this would, regardless of which agency gets substituted in the bill, I believe they'll be able to charge the fees necessary and not have any impact on any existing programs.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator Peterson, would you care to close?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief. You know, I think this does make some sense, and at least from my perspective, logically, this is the agency where the expertise resides for this kind of licensing and regulation. And I would hope you can support the amendment.
The question now arises on the amendment of Senator Peterson. As many are in favor of the motion, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no. The clerk will record the vote.
Mr. Chairman, 38 senators have voted aye, 12 senators have voted no.
With 38 senators voting aye and 12 voting no, the amendment has passed.